like to build on the excellent presentations that we've already heard and talk about leadership in STEM using my own career as an example. So my own path, I came to my engineering career at the graduate level, actually, and I was seeking an alternate path to contribute to medicine outside of being a physician. I was a pre-med chemistry major at Xavier University of Louisiana, which is renowned for its ability to place African Americans in medical school and have them graduate as physicians. I lacked role models and mentors in engineering, but what I learned on my own pointed me in the direction of chemical engineering. And actually, Rita's story, when she talked about high school chemistry, brought up a memory of one of my own around high school chemistry. It was not as direct as Rita's experience, but subtle, but it had the same kind of a chilling effect. The high school chemistry teacher largely ignored the girls in the class. And so the message that I got was like, why bother with chemistry? You know, chemistry is not a field that's going to be welcoming to women. And one of the reasons why I decided to major in chemistry was to challenge that assumption. So my path has been characterized a lot by a series of firsts that in many ways, as I reflect back, I see it's really defined my experiences in the context of being in that solo status and the associated challenges and opportunities that comes with that. I was the first African American to receive a PhD in chemical engineering from Rice. And at that time, I was the fifth African American female in the nation to receive a PhD in chemical engineering. And when I started my academic career in chemical engineering, I was the first African American female to hold a tenure track position in chemical engineering. So the research that I started my academic career with was a continuation of the research that I was doing at the graduate level, where I chose to study sickle cell disease, particularly because I wanted an area of study that would allow me to get back to my community. And I was able to use engineering principles applied to a medical problem that disproportionately impacted African Americans. So now with respect to formal leadership, I never envisioned myself being an administrator. I was very content with my life as a faculty member and this idea that I could contribute and give back by training young people in terms of education and research. That was my mission in the world. And I ended up taking on a position in academic administration as an associate professor. I was vice provost for undergraduate education. And my rationale for taking on that responsibility was that it would give me a chance to have broader impact. I was thinking that I could actually impact curriculum across the whole institution. I could set policies and practices around how we trained undergraduates. And that was attractive to me. So that was a real turning point in terms of moving into a leadership role through administration. I also reasoned that having a seat at the institutional table, having a voice, and actually peeking behind the curtains to understand a bit more about how institutions would run, that my voice, my perspective would be helpful. So that was part of my rationale. I went on to hold other administrative roles in the academy. And when I took on an engineering deanship, I was the first African-American female to serve as engineering dean at an institution that was not a primarily white institution. I was the first one to serve in an institution that was not historically Black college or university. So another way that I found some leadership opportunities was actually through professional societies. And I raised that because we don't often think about outside of the academy and the role that engagement in professional societies can play. So I have served as president of the Biomedical Engineering Society, also president of the American Institute for Medical and Biological Engineering. And in each of those societies, I was the second woman, but the first African American to hold a presidency for those organizations. And now I'm serving as president-elect of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And I raise that because there are multiple ways that we can use our voice and forge paths in leadership. And I want to just mention what Willie Pearson was saying, that we need to be able to go beyond focusing on these first and examine deeply pathways and factors that influence our ability to have the career progression paths, but also, as Willie was saying, change the face of science and engineering. So one of the things in terms of just some learnings from forging these pathways as a form of leadership, being in a space where you're not expected to be, being in spaces that were not designed for you, can actually be a vehicle for change in and of itself. Just think about it. You could, by your very presence, serve as a change agent, changing the dynamic, changing the face. And so I think that's very critical as we think about moving through these spaces, particularly for me as an African-American female. I'm keenly aware of racialized and gendered behaviors and practices and how they impact careers. And part of my drive was like paving a way for others and wanting others coming behind me not to have to go through what I had to go through, being able to open doors and provide opportunities. And I really like what John Slaughter was saying, like having opportunities match the talent, meet the talent is really important. It's also critical that we have systems and environments that support the success of everyone. And then I was thinking a little bit more about motivation. And thanks to Ebony McGee, I have a term for part of what motivated me. It's a term that's called racial activism. And what Dr. McGee was saying was that racially active individuals are more likely to pursue faculty careers, which I thought was important. So this idea of actually making a difference in these areas and being charged up and using that activism to change the landscape. I also see myself as what's referred to in the literature as a tempered radical, where part of it is you have a sense of pushing and then pulling back, pushing and pulling back in ways that you first have to be in the system in order to affect change. So we can't like just do it from looking on the outside looking in. So I think that's important to understand too, because part of what I was trying to deal with, as you heard Vernon explain, this what happens around isolation, marginalization, perceptions and stereotypes, challenges to your authority. So again, part of my approach was to use leadership and take those opportunities to provide direction, have a voice, and be at the table as many ways possible to create pathways for others. And I have another connection to just give an example. Rita talked about having chaired the Committee on Women in Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine for the National Academies. I learned so much from Rita and others who were on the committee. I'm now chairing that committee. So this opportunity to be in and to contribute in as many ways as we can around collaboration, coordination, again, matching opportunities with the talent and leading by example so that we can affect change. So I'm going to close shortly with a couple other things to think about. Black women held 3.4% of tenure track positions in Massachusetts in 2019. There's still a dearth of women of color, men of color in these positions, but things really are starting to change. When I took on my presidency of Olin in 2020, another Black woman took on a presidency of Simmons, thereby doubling at that time the number of African-American female presidents in the region. So I'm saying that to say that there's a lot of work to do, but there's some reason for hope. And there's some reason to recognize that our activism, our voices, our activities, pushing, not accepting the status quo really will allow us to make a difference. So change is coming and we need to pick up the pace. So I will stop my comments there so that we will have some time for some further discussion.